Alright,
Maybe.
here we are. There's
New
Facebook
kitty bed.
land.
Trying to convince Eeriness she should be in the new kitty bed. Eeriness having nothing to do with this. Come on, baby.
Let's see. Does this look good?
Oh, we don't even under you.
It looks about as good as it's gonna get.
You need to tilt it up.
No. I think it's good.
Okay.
I just tilted it down.
Ah.
Worries in?
You're fine without it.
I didn't need it.
You didn't do it. Hey, Lulu. Bye-bye, Lulu. You want to try the new bed, Lulu?
Alright.
We got a fuzzy bed for you here.
We do have people watching us.
Yes, I know.
Hi, everybody.
Trying to get Lulu to show herself on camera.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
You can see the Lulu right there.
Blog Talk Radio.
That's what I really wanted to do. Tilt the camera down so that people can see the cats. Because cats.
Anyway, happy holidays, everybody. We hope you had a
Yes.
great holiday weekend, even with all the cold and the snow. Lulu's trying.
Happy Boxing Day, everybody.
Boxing Day. Yeah, Lulu. Is that for you?
Alright, let's see if I can get online here.
Maybe, sort of.
Maybe, sort of, kind of, maybe.
So it's just Chris, the cat's and I tonight.
Yep. Because Lee, look.
Lee's got family obligations.
Oh, I turned off the Wi-Fi on this. That doesn't help.
No, that doesn't.
I was trying to turn off the volume on this. Haha.
Technical issues, as always.
Self-imposed technical issues.
So, cheers to getting yourself back together again for the holidays.
Cheers. Last show before the new year.
And then you're going to have a whole whopping 3 of them next month.
Yes, we are.
Because our schedule's a little wonky. But are you
Yes.
online finally?
Getting there.
Getting there. Lulu, you got to do a close-up? Maybe? Marsha's on. I see Marsha.
Hello.
Alright, so, yeah, Chris and I are running tours, and we're just doing Friday, Saturdays at this point.
Well, except for this week, we're doing Thursday, Friday.
Right, because of when the holidays fall.
Because we're not going out on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, we're not going out on any nights where there might be celebratory gunfire. We just don't do that. So,
It's not our thing.
no.
Didn't need full screen.
Alright, so we're going to go ahead and talk about ghost stories in the dead of winter, otherwise known as Haunted Christmas Tales Part 2.
Because we did this last year.
Yes.
Different version of it, of course. Different stories. So we got new stories for everybody for this year, for the stories around the Christmas season.
Mhm.
So all kinds of, there's ghost stories, there's other kind of inexplicable, spooky, paranormal stuff that...
Well, we just decided we'd throw it in because it happened around this time of year.
yeah, as you do.
Yeah. So from mystical religious lore to the haunting traditions of Charles Dickens' supernatural visitors in A Christmas Carol, Christmas and the paranormal phenomenon had a very close relationship for countless of generations. Christmas, Yule, the winter solstice, all have been associated with magic, miracles, and of course they don't have any rational explanation. So whether you're a believer or think that such tales are all bah humbug, well, they do make for some interesting and intriguing and often spine-tingling tales. So we're going to start with the one called The Ghostly Caress. It was Christmas time of 1995, and Paige was visiting with her aunt at her home on a reservation in North Dakota. Some of her family were in the living room watching television. The kids were playing in the rooms or sleeping. Paige was sitting with her uncle and aunt working on a puzzle at a table. Paige's cousin was working late at the casino and was set to be home around midnight. As Paige's cousin arrived home and was walking towards the house, she looked in the window and saw Paige sitting at the table with her uncle sitting across from her. She also saw someone standing to the left of Paige and someone standing in the corner. She continued to walk into the house, thinking nothing of it, and then she got inside and said her hellos and put her stuff away and joined her family at the table. As they were sitting there talking, Paige's cousin looked at her and asked who was standing next to her a few minutes ago and who was in the corner. Paige told her no one had been there, but her cousin insisted. Yeah, there was someone standing next to you. It looked like your mom, and she was playing with your hair. Paige's hand went to her long hair. but she was wearing down that evening. Paige was suddenly shaken up at the thought. She was only 12 years old at the time, and her cousin swore up and down that someone had been standing over her, rubbing her head and watching her put the puzzle together with her aunt and uncle, and that there was another person standing behind that person in the corner. Their minds drifted back to family members that had passed, and they got to thinking about Paige's cousin's mother, who had passed away on her birthday a week before Christmas back in 1992. And Paige's family, aunts and uncles, were just as close and important as mothers and fathers, and Paige started to relax as the idea of being visited by her recently passed aunt was quite soothing. Seeing strange things around the holidays has come to be expected by Paige, and where others might be frightened by the prospect, Paige often takes comfort in the idea that her family visits for the holidays, no matter what side of the mortal coil they may stand on. So who else do we have with us?
Let's see. Nobody else chatting yet. We have a few people watching.
Okay.
Oh,
I see.
Dana. Hi, Dana.
Yeah.
We're doing well, and yourself? Glad you're here tonight. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we just dove right into things tonight.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So we'll do a little recap before.
I think that was the boys that stayed in the bed.
Boys are moving furniture upstairs. But yeah, so let's see. Yeah, of course we had Christmas yesterday.
Yes.
Which was a lovely, relaxing day for us.
It was, and well, the tree came down this morning because the cats.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Should I go investigate that?
You might want to check on that.
I'll be right back.
That was loud. I don't know if y'all heard that. Anyways, I'll carry on. So, yeah, Christmas was yesterday, but then we had, leading up to Christmas, we got together with some friends for some Christmas Eve dinner right around the corner at Patrick Henry's Pub and Grill, which was very delightful. Glad to be able to see everybody there right before the holiday. And then we had done a reading of the story that we did a couple weeks ago, our Told After Supper, the traditional Victorian story. We did a live reading of that down at Richmond Brewing last Thursday. They were kind enough to let us come on in and kind of take over the floor for a little while while we read that aloud, and had a lot of fun doing that. So, but that's about it. Yeah, that's all that we've had going on here over the last couple of weeks. It's been low key. It is our low season. But yeah, so here we are now, Boxing Day, day after Christmas, and I wanted to go ahead and kind of mention all that before we dive into this next set of stories, because this next set of stories is very, very much related directly to the Christmas holiday, in the sense that we're actually going to talk about some Santa Claus sightings. These may not necessarily be ghost stories. We don't want to actually think of our dear beloved Santa Claus as being amongst the departed, but we do definitely kind of tack it in there with some of the supernatural stuff, because, well, you know, for people to truly believe that they had a sighting of Mr. Claus himself is really kind of a bit of a leap for some people. So, we got a couple of those stories for you here right now. And, yeah, let's just say, so, is there a child alive who didn't try to sneak downstairs and hide behind the couch or a chair or something, waiting for the sound of sleigh bells as the clock strikes midnight on Christmas? Everything okay?
Nico looks very guilty, but nothing's out of place.
Interesting.
But yes,
So-
I was one of those children who did try to sneak and find Santa Claus.
Yeah, so now, of course, they're hoping to catch a glimpse of old St. Nick coming down the chimney with his big sack full of toys and treats. At least they hope that it's toys and treats. That time that they accidentally set the lawn on fire has a lot of them worried about a big bag of coal. But regardless, another part of the tradition always involves being disappointed and having to trudge back up to bed without ever beholding Santa. After all, the jolly old elf is always too clever to be caught. Right? Santa Claus is one of those spirits who's supposed to haunt Christmas. Ever since 1822, when Clement Moore wrote his immortal poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and later with illustrations of the famed 19th century political cartoonist Thomas Nast, The image of Saint Nick in his red suit and hat with shiny black boots riding through the sky in his sleigh filled with gifts for all the children of the world has become the most enduring symbol of the Christmas season. The preponderance of Santa lore has led to all sorts of claims attesting to actual sightings of the real Santa. Most of these assertions are either cons or outright jokes, but amidst the noise there can be found some possible truths of encounters with the elusive elf. We're going to start with the experience of a young man named Jason. Now, this was all the way back Christmas Eve 1976 in Gresham, Oregon. Jason was about 5 years old, and his father had just taken a job in Grants Pass, Oregon, and thus left Jason and his mom alone for Christmas. It was difficult not having his father there, as it was their first Christmas without him. Jason had been sleeping in his mom's room on Christmas Eve when they heard something on the roof. Of course, being a child, he thought it was Santa Claus, but his mother thought it was a burglar and told him to stay in bed as she cautiously went to the window. Jason was excited and scared while he watched his mom look out the window. And she just stared, and continued staring even when he asked what was out there. When she returned to bed, she had a mesmerized look on her face. This was when Jason jumped out of bed and ran to the window himself. What he saw was Santa, his sleigh, and reindeer flying off of their roof into the sky just like on the Christmas cards. Jason never understood why he and his mother never talked about what happened that night and what they had seen. When he tried to ask her about it, she would refuse to discuss it and tell him to go to sleep. Jason didn't understand that his mother was afraid she might have been losing her mind. Years later, in Jason's high school German class, he had to tell a Christmas story. Jason shared this story with his classmates, and all of these classmates laughed at him, and he never heard the end of it. Even after he explained that he was serious about what had happened that night, none of them would let up. They were absolutely relentless in their mockery. But after class, another student came up to him, one that he did not know nor recognize, and told him that it was in fact a great Christmas story. He went on to tell Jason that if one truly believes, he may once in his life experience what Jason had seen on that Christmas night when he was 5 years old. Then the kid left, and Jason never saw him again. Who was he? An angel? A messenger? Jason didn't know. But when he got home that day, he decided to talk to his mother about what had happened that night. He pressed her for answers. She finally opened up about having a difficult time because his father wasn't around for Christmas that year. She hoped he didn't think her crazy, but she saw Santa's sleigh and reindeer leaving their roof taking off into the sky. The roof had animal prints and disturbed snow where the sleigh had been sitting. She didn't want to speak of it because she thought she had been hallucinating. She had received negative feedback when she told her father about it and had not spoken about it since then. Jason confirmed her sightings with his own and added that he had heard sleigh bells in the night sky. They both were relieved with the confirmation of the miracle they had witnessed when they truly had needed one.
Next we have Ellen's story, and this is Christmas Eve of 1959. Ellen was staying up late to watch Miracle on 34th Street. She was too old to believe in Santa Claus, but the movie got her thinking. She turned to her older brother Bobby. Do you think Santa could be real? Bobby razzed her about claiming how gullible she was because of the movie. After the movie, she and her sister were sent to bed, and their mother was calling out that Santa wouldn't come until they were fast asleep. Well, Ellen realized that she wished she could still believe in Santa like her sister, because that was half the fun of Christmas. Ellen and her sister had shared a bedroom, and after they were both asleep, Ellen was woken by a light coming from the hallway. She knew there was a nightlight out there, but it wasn't like the light she saw. This was a whitish-bluish beam that seemed to fill the house. She crept out to the hallway to look over the railing, expecting to see her father. Instead of her father, she saw a man near the Christmas tree. Then she tiptoed down the stairs, not wanting him to see her. Just as he turned towards her, she realized this was not her father. It was a strange man dressed in very strange clothing. He had a big fur coat trimmed with white and gold fur and a big fur hat. The clothes looked really old-fashioned. He smiled at Ellen. She smiled back. She knew she should be scared, but there was something about him. It put her at ease. It made her feel a little joyful, even. As much as she wanted to talk to the man, she felt as if something was turning her around and gently pushing her back up the stairs. In the hallway, she stopped to look over the railing to see what he was doing, and there was no one there. Had Ellen been sleepwalking and dreamed the entire thing? She went back to bed completely bewildered. On Christmas morning, Ellen was awakened by her sister jumping on her bed, yelling, "Get up! Get up!" And she crawled out of bed and went downstairs to the tree where everyone had gathered. Her mother commented that Ellen was very sleepy this morning. Ellen then asked her parents if they had seen the weird light last night. She went on to describe the light and finding the man downstairs, and after asking why she didn't come and get them, Ellen then described the man that he didn't say anything and disappeared. Her sister immediately started to cry that Ellen had seen Santa. Ellen explained that it wasn't Santa. He hadn't been wearing a big red suit or a floppy red hat. Her father, who had been listening intently, suddenly turned and left the room. He returned a few minutes later with a book. Once he found the image and turned it around, he asked if this was who she had seen. Ellen explained that she saw the picture and that it was indeed the nightly visitor, that her father had explained to the rest of the shocked family that the image was St. Nicholas, strong in the 18th century. So Ellen had indeed seen Santa.
When Misty was 9 years old, she could not get to sleep on Christmas Eve because she was so excited about the presents. She was wondering if her parents had anything to do with the gifts that she had received from Santa the year before. Her family lived in Texas, and even though it was frosty cold outside that night, the house was toasty warm with the heat on. So toasty warm, in fact, that Misty was left feeling a little parched. She got out of bed, cracked open her bedroom door to make sure no one was out in the living room so she could get something to drink without being seen. She also figured that it would be a great opportunity to try and spy a glimpse of Santa. Peeking out the door, Misty caught a glimpse of someone crouching by the family Christmas tree. Her first thought was that it was one of her parents, until the figure stood up and turned around. To her shock, she was faced with Santa Claus, but her surprise went a little deeper still. Strangely, she could see the Christmas lights from the tree shining through him. He was taking the stockings down off of the mantle, placing them on the coffee table. When he started to turn around to put the next stocking on the table, Misty closed the door and jumped into bed. The next morning, she woke up and told her sister what she had seen. Misty told her where Santa had put the stockings. When they went into the living room, the stockings were where Misty had seen Santa put them the night before. They both turned and looked at each other and froze for a moment. From then on, Misty has told everyone that she still firmly believes in Santa to this day. I'll run with one more.
Okay.
And moving on to another one. This is Christmas Eve in 1961. Carrie was living in Boardman, Ohio with her family. Her bedroom was at the far end of the house, and she had gone to sleep with happy anticipation of what Christmas morning would bring. Before she could get to Christmas morning, however, she was awakened at a very late hour, unsure as to exactly what time it was. Her attention was drawn to her bedroom door at the opposite corner of the room, and she watched as the door gently opened. She pretended to close her eyes because she didn't want her mother or father to catch her up in the middle of the night. A nightlight in the hallway threw some dim light through the door as Carrie peered out with barely open eyes. What stood in the doorway was not at all what Carrie had expected. She found herself looking at a man dressed in a red suit. He had white trim around his waist, like fur, a long white beard, and was wearing a Santa hat. He had red pants and black boots. He stood there and looked at Carrie for a few seconds, then closed the door. Carrie was terrified and pulled the blankets over her head. When she had summoned the courage to pry her eyes open again, there was nobody there. What Carrie had witnessed left an indelible impression on her. She would never forget seeing the man in the red suit for the rest of her days. The following morning, Carrie asked her mother if she or her father had been out of bed the previous night. Carrie's mother said no, and in fact, she had already received a fantastic Christmas present. Carrie's 4-month-old sister had slept through the night for the first time since she had been born, allowing Mom and Dad a much-needed rest. When Carrie told her mother that she had seen Santa, Carrie's mother grew quite angry, saying that Carrie had most certainly not seen any such man in the house. While Carrie dropped the discussion that day, she insists that she knows exactly what she saw.
This is Mrs. Wage's tale from 1980s and 2009. Now, she wanted to call Mrs. Wages because she didn't want her real name revealed. But she grew up in a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee in the 1980s. And one Christmas Eve, when she was 8 or 9 years old, she was coming home from a Christmas party with her parents. Well, when they pulled up in the driveway, they very clearly saw Santa Claus in a sleigh hovering above their house. The sound of the sleigh bells filled the air, and the sleigh was gently illuminated so that they could clearly make out Santa sitting there with the reins in his hands. There were a number of reindeer leading the sleigh, but there wasn't enough time to count them before Santa gave the family a friendly wave and flew off. Now, Mrs. Wage's father was in absolute shock. He was an air traffic controller, and when he went back to work after the holidays, he asked if anything unusual had been on the radar that night, but there was nothing notable to report that could help explain what the family had seen above their house that night. Fast forward a couple of decades, and Mrs. Wages is all grown up and out doing some Christmas shopping of her own. It's Black Friday of 2009, and she was waiting in line at Target when she started chatting with a fellow shopper. They started talking about the shopping itself, but then a woman mentioned out of nowhere that her brother had seen Santa in his sleigh 2 years before. What the woman described brought back Mrs. Wages' childhood memories in a flood, and has left Mrs. Wages sitting by the window every Christmas Eve night since then, hoping to catch another glimpse of jolly old St. Nick. On Christmas Day of 2008, in Bloomington, Indiana, Scarlett's morning got off to the usual Christmas start. The family gathered around the tree to open gifts, and then she turned her attention to prepare the early afternoon supper for family and friends. Everyone enjoyed their meal, and by 5 p.m. everyone had departed except for her sister and brother-in-law who lived with her. With the hearty Christmas meal in their bellies, they went to take a nap, leaving Scarlett along with her dog, Toby. Scarlett decided that a nap would be a wonderful idea and went to her own room. While her sister had left her door open at the end of the hall, Scarlett firmly shut her own. Toby curled up on the foot of Scarlett's bed to sleep as usual. With it being a chilly evening, Scarlett pulled the blankets and comforter up around her head and curled up to nap for an hour. Just as she was starting to doze off, Scarlett heard the latch on her bedroom door open. She waited several seconds for her sister or brother-in-law to say whatever they had come to say, but there was no other sound. It was almost 7 p.m., and so the bedroom was pitch black. The lights in the kitchen and the bathroom were still on, and there were a lot of Christmas lights in the living room, so the hallway was well lit. Scarlett would have been able to see whoever was at the door just by lifting her head. She pushed the blankets down and lifted her head up from the pillow, but just as she would have been able to see who was in the doorway, an extremely bright light hit her right in the face. Scarlett shielded her eyes. "Turn out that... You're blinding me." The light immediately disappeared. She heard the bedroom door latch and close. Scarlett turned on her bedside lamp, looked around the bedroom, and there was nobody there except for her and Toby. Toby jumped off the bed and went to the door without showing any signs of alarm. At first, Scarlett wasn't frightened because Toby was a Dutch Shepherd and was trained to be an excellent watchdog. Since Toby was already up, she decided to let him outside and see what her sister and her husband needed. But when she went into the hallway, she could see both of them still in bed. Scarlett took Toby into the living room and let him outside, and there was nobody there either. Ordinarily, Scarlett wasn't a skittish person, and strange noises or lights wouldn't alarm her, but this situation was eerie. And while thinking about the blinding light, her skin started to crawl. The latch to Scarlett's bedroom door was notoriously tricky. It had to be jiggled at just the right pop to open. There was no way the door would have just opened on its own, let alone close on its own again. Scarlett couldn't understand how her sister or brother-in-law could have come into her room and then returned to their own bed, crawled under the covers, in just the few seconds it took her to reach the hallway. But she figured it had to be one of them because Toby would always bark and growl at anyone and everything that he didn't immediately recognize. Later that evening, Scarlett's brother-in-law got up to go to work that night. She asked him what he wanted earlier in the evening when he opened her door. He looked puzzled and said, "I never got up. I certainly never opened your door. I slept soundly the whole time I was in bed." Okay. So Scarlett asked her sister, "Did you want something earlier this evening when you opened my door?" She also looked puzzled and said, "I dozed off and on, but I never got out of bed. I never saw or heard anything in the hallway." So who was Scarlett's special Christmas visitor? How'd they get in and out so quickly? Like most people, the thoughts of loved ones are always close at hand during the holiday season. When she first went to lay down, Scarlett was thinking how happy she was that her small family enjoyed a pleasant Christmas. But wouldn't it have been so much better if her mother and brother had still been alive to share it with them? Scarlett turned to thinking that it was her brother's spirit stopping by to say, "Merry Christmas. I still think of you too." Try as she might, Scarlett hasn't been able to find a logical explanation for this strange event. She's half afraid that her heart stopped during her sleep, and the light she saw was the bright light people report to see after near-death experiences. She half laughs at herself, thinking, leave it to me to see the stairway to heaven and ruin my chance at eternal paradise by saying, "Turn out that light." She has since made a mental note that if she ever sees another bright light, she's going to clean up her language. Just in case. Just in case. Probably a good idea.
So now we are going to move on. These have all been really happy, cheery stories so far.
This one's not.
It's not terrible.
But it's not cheery.
No, not quite cheery either. It's a little... has a little kind of a bit of a grim twist to the end. A little unsettling, if you will. So this is a story about a woman named Paulina. And as a child, she was visiting with family in Western Samoa for the Christmas holidays. So we're like clear around the other side of the planet right now. Now, Paulina was actually from Australia herself, and she wasn't familiar with the area, and she would spend most of her time following her cousin around. This found her playing hide and seek with some of the other kids from her mother's childhood village, and naturally this game took them to the graveyard.
Because it does.
Because that's what you do, right?
It's the best place for hide and seek.
Yes. Now, as creepy as it was, it did afford them some light from the adjacent church. They hid in the shadows and waited for the boy who was it. Paulina and her cousin could hear him coming, so they kept quiet. The boy was pretty loud. They wondered what he was making a fuss about, and so eventually they decided to give up hiding and they went out to see. They followed the noise to the church and found the boy laying on the floor, dead still. They ran to get his parents, and when they all came back, they found the boy still laying there. The boy regained consciousness, and his parents took him home. They were forbidden to ever play in the graveyard again. Now, the boy later told them that he had walked into the church as he thought that his brother was hiding in there. He saw a boy standing right at the front of the altar. He didn't know if it was his brother because the boy's back was turned. He ran up and tapped this boy on the shoulder, and as soon as he did, the strange boy disappeared, and the boy who was it fainted. It turns out that the boy's brother had been home the whole time. He hadn't been to the church at all. What remains unsettling about the whole ordeal is that the boy who fainted has been ill since that night and never did recover. Whoever was in the church must have been angry to be disturbed by the kids at that Christmas time. Sounds like a bit of a Scrooge to me. So, next story, we are going to go ahead and come back stateside. And going to another Christmas Eve. This time, it's about 3:30 in the afternoon. So, sun is still up, but it's going to be setting fairly soon. Yet, nonetheless, we do go and find ourselves at an appliance store in Edmondson, Kentucky. And the owner there, his name was Jake. And at 3 o'clock on this afternoon, he winds up receiving a call. Now, Jake answered the phone just as he had many times before by asking how he could help the caller. However, this would go like no other service call that he had handled before. The caller's name was Mildred, and she requested that Jake go to check on her parents' refrigerator. She didn't know what was wrong with the appliance, but she had a feeling that something was, and it would be terrible if her elderly parents had to be without it on Christmas. Jake took the job, wrote down the address, but there was something off about the location. Jake asked, "Hasn't this house been vacant for years?" Mildred stated that he must be thinking of a different house in the area. When Jake arrived at the house, he recognized it as the old and dilapidated dwelling he had been thinking of. But to his surprise, it wasn't vacant. An elderly woman opened the screen door, a door he remembered was hanging by one hinge when he last saw it. She invited him in and thanked him for coming on such short notice on Christmas Eve as well. As they entered the living room, Jake met the husband, who was laying on a small bed near the fireplace. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the smell of death hung in the air. He inquired about the man's health and was told it was just the wasting sickness known as old age. He gently asked if a hospital or nursing home would be better and was immediately told that moving her husband there would kill him. They had lived in the house for 70 years and wanted to stay to the very end. Jake then steered the conversation towards the refrigerator in question. The woman excused herself for talking his ear since they don't get very many visitors. Jake took pause at this statement and asked about her daughter visiting them. She simply replied that their daughter has been dead for 15 years. Now, Jake was thoroughly confused, but decided to turn his attention to the service job. The refrigerator was an ancient one, and it was indeed quite dead. When he opened it, there was no food or drink inside, and the woman couldn't tell him when it had stopped running or how they had been surviving without it. It took Jake nearly an hour to get the fridge working again. When he was finished, a younger teenager came into the room. Jake could see that something was different about her, and she did seem a little, maybe mentally challenged. A wave of intense love swept through him, and an inner voice told him that he couldn't possibly charge these people for the work that he had done. The teenager then walked out, and he gathered up his tools and was about to leave when the woman asked how much they owed him. "Nothing, ma'am," he replied. "Merry Christmas." Her husband protested a bit, and Jake asked them to please accept the work as a Christmas present to them. As Jake drove home, he pondered the strange service call. He was sure it was the same house he had passed so many times, with a trash-strewn yard, dilapidated and vacant, even though he had just interacted with the residents. When he reached home, he decided to call Mildred to let her know that her parents' fridge was up and running, but when he dialed the number, he got a recording. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Jake then called the phone company, only to be informed that the number had not been in use for many months and they had no record of Mildred as a customer. At this point, Jake was sure he was going crazy. He put on his coat and walked out of the house, even though dinner was just about ready. He had to know what was going on and returned to the old house. When he arrived, he was greeted by the decrepit house so firmly fixed in his memory. The screen door was hanging by one hinge. The front yard was filled with rusty junk. Jake climbed out of his truck and walked through the deserted house. The smell of death and decay was so overpowering that he had to back out of the door. He jumped into his truck and drove home like one possessed. He was even pulled over by the local policeman, but let off with a warning because it was Christmas Eve. Excuse me. Jake believes he had an encounter with an angel named Mildred and the ghosts of the couple who spent 70 years in that house and refused to leave it. He somehow walked through a door into another time and place, visible only for a brief period of time before disappearing again.
Who says they don't make service calls to the other side? Just saying, we need that type of service these days. Alright, so this one's called Calling 1-800 The Other Side. We've discussed receiving calls from the dead before, and this is one of those stories set firmly in the Christmas season. Christmas time seems to be a particular popular time for those ghostly long-distance calls. Our dearly departed ones like to check on us, make sure things are going all right. Jason was despondent. It was Christmas Day, and all he could think about was his dad, who had passed away exactly a year ago from a heart attack. They had been extraordinarily close, and due to this closeness, Jason was finding it difficult to get into that Christmas spirit. To make matters worse, Jason had also just gone through a divorce. Jason spent Christmas with his sister and her family going through the motions of the holiday, exchanging the presents, eating Christmas dinner, and the usual chatter of family trying to catch up on life events from the year. But his heart just wasn't in it. After bidding goodnight to his family, Jason turned in here early. He was awoken in the middle of the night by the phone ringing. After answering it, an onslaught of static met his ear. But through the hissing and crackling, he heard a familiar voice say, "Jay? Jabo!" The only one person called him Jabo, his dad. Jason instantly recognized that Brooklyn brogue and put his mind spinning with the impossibility of the implication. "Pop?" he gasped. Jabo. The voice struggled against the static. "Is that you, Pop?" "It's okay, Jabo. Everything's okay," said the voice. Then the static drowned out the voice, and the line fell dead. Jason was laying there, shaking. How could his father possibly have called him on the phone? Was it somebody's idea of a sick joke? He finally fell asleep, and when he awoke the next day, he had almost convinced himself he had dreamed it. Then his young nephew came into his room and asked who called him last night. Jake broke down and wept. He wished that call could have gone on forever. Despite his grief, Jason now knew his father would always be with him. And finally, a semblance of peace had settled into him, and that had eluded him all year. The Twilight Zone, that brilliant series created by Rod Serling, had many tales of the paranormal that back then were largely dismissed as pure science fiction, but today they'd totally be accepted within the realm of possibility by paranormal researchers. One of the zone's favorite subjects was life after death, and in at least 3 episodes, the telephone was utilized as a vehicle for the dead to contact the living. In Long Distance Call, a young boy communicates with his dead grandmother via a toy telephone she gave him minutes before she died. In The Night Call, an elderly woman receives late-night calls from her long-dead true love when the phone line goes down over his tombstone. And in The Hitchhiker, a woman who died in a car crash phones home to talk to her mother. Although most of us would probably be highly skeptical if we were informed that incidents like this had occurred, the truth is that the phone calls from the dead are a documented phenomenon with predictable characteristics. The calls are almost always from someone very close to the recipient, and they tend to happen within 24 hours of the caller's death, although they can occur up to several years following the death. People often report receiving such communications on a specific holiday, a birthday, or anniversary. Sometimes the calls are made to announce the person's passing or say farewell. Other times the dead have been known to make make a warning call to a person, alerting loved ones on the impending danger or imparting important information. Actress Ida Lupino, for instance, reported receiving a phone call from her father, who had been dead for 6 months, telling her whereabouts of some important documents needed for the settling of his estate. She found them, exactly where he said they would be. Phone call communication with the other side can also be a two-way affair. You can make a call to someone, have a normal conversation, and find out later that person had died earlier. This happened to Ginny, a young woman who was living in California and felt the overwhelming urge to call her dad, who was living alone in Maine, just before Christmas. "I usually phoned him on Christmas Day," she says, "but for some reason I couldn't explain. I felt I had to call him right then. I just had this sense that something was wrong." Ginny dialed her father's number, and when he answered, she immediately said, "Dad, are you okay?" "Sure, honey," he replied. "How come you're calling now? Christmas is just a couple of days away." They had a long, cozy conversation. "I was afraid something had happened to you," Ginny said. "That's ridiculous," her dad laughed. "I've never felt better in my life." Ginny hung up, vastly relieved, until later that day, when the Maine State Police called. "We're sorry to have to give you the news," the officer apologized, "but there was a bad ice storm last night and your father slipped and hit his head. He died immediately, but we didn't discover him until a short while ago." "That's impossible," Ginny exploded. "I just spoke to my dad a few hours ago and he was fine." But her father had indeed passed away. Indeed, his spirit form had probably never felt better in his life, and somehow answered his phone to talk to his daughter one last time. How exactly does one explain a phone call from the other side? There are a number of theories. The most plausible suggests that there are pure energy form. Spirits can connect to the waves and reach us via telephones, computers, TVs, radios, and other electrical devices. But another theory suggests that communication is either fantasy or tricks being played on us by low-level spirits. It's a well-known fact that spirits can be mischievous and that many enjoy playing tricks on the unsuspecting living, especially during the jolly and forgiving holiday season.
And that was admittedly a short episode for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the last story that we have for you this evening. We do appreciate you taking the time to go ahead and tune in right here day after Christmas. And hope that you've all had a lovely holiday. Marcia did chime in. Says Beth got a call from one of our students who passed away, or a text.
It was a text.
A text.
Yeah, I actually had a text conversation with a student had passed away on the anniversary of the show. And she had told me how much she missed working on that show. It freaked me out at the time, I gotta tell you.
Yeah. And who's, yes. So, nobody's playing in paper. That was the beanbag with a couple of the cats crawling around on it. So, excuse the background noise. Sorry about that.
The beanbag's right behind the tablet that's recording us.
Yep. The cats have been sleeping all day, and now
it's no zoomy time.
Now they're awake. So,
except for Una, who's here, she's been cuddling all day.
yes, and
So
now she's as close to the fire as she can be.
Yeah.
So, but yes, yeah. But yeah, had a lovely holiday, nice and relaxing.
Yep.
We're admittedly a little out of it. It's been.
It's been an odd holiday season for us. It hasn't been bad. It's just been odd.
Yes, nothing bad. Just a little odd.
So.
And maybe, I don't know, the holiday falling on the weekend and stuff like that, and kind of work, messing up in weird work schedules and stuff.
I forgot it was Monday.
Yeah.
I literally forgot it was Monday.
Yeah.
Until like an hour and a half before the show. And Chris is like, okay, we're ready for the show. And I'm like,
yep, that's tonight.
oops.
Here we are.
I was busy working on a script for the end of January.
Yes, and it is also wicked cold outside.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aside from going to the storage shed and a little shopping, we never really did get out today.
No, we took part of our Christmas decorations down. We'll take the rest down at Epiphany.
Because Mr. Nico and Miss Una could not stay out of the Christmas tree,
So that had to go down.
It was time.
But the rest of the decorations we'll put away later and make the second trip to the storage shed. But I had to go and buy winter sports equipment for my skeletons. Thus the sled we have here.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so coming up on the end of the year, I have to go back to work.
But I'm going to have lunch with friends. Our usual winter break sushi is tomorrow, which makes me happy. It's winter break sushi.
But back to work for me, and
birthday celebration on Friday for Krista.
Yes, I'm getting old.
You're only as old as you want to be, so make your choice.
I'm going to be the answer to everything.
Okay. 42. He's 42.
I will be 42. But yes, so that is Friday, and then New Year's, which will be another weird weekend, honestly.
Yes, we're going to celebrate Irish New Year's and then come home and play games and hide from the gunfire that will be happening in the neighborhood.
Celebratory gunfire, because that's what they do. That's how they roll. So, but yeah, so that'll be this week.
And then starting in January, we're going to have 3 episodes.
Ooh.
Because of the way things fall. So the first will be January 6th.
Yes.
And then we'll do the following week as well. So January 6th is going to be Haunted Mississippi.
Yeah, Mississippi, then Witches.
And then Haunted Colorado.
And
so
Haunted
I'm starting the state haunts, like I said I was going to.
Yeah, you've made a dent already, but we're going to get a couple more checked off next month. And tomorrow,
the Colorado one's going to make you want to go skiing. Yeah. I'm just saying.
Tomorrow night we have that private haunted dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're working tomorrow night. Yeah. So, work tomorrow night. Then, I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Day at a time.
Yeah.
That type of thing. Next month's going to be next month's going to be busy for us.
So if you're wanting to see us in person and you're not coming on a tour, Virginia Paracon or at Hanover
Tavern Paracon, you can come see us on Saturday, January 21st there.
And you can see me down at the Poe Birthday Bash.
That evening.
That evening. I will be hanging out down there with the crew. We've got 2 tours running that night from the Shadows of Shaka tour, which includes stories about the Poe Museum. So, yeah.
Yep. So, we've got a couple opportunities to come on out. We've got big old birthday bash weekend for the Poe Museum. They got stuff going all weekend. We're going to be doing the tours there on Saturday, but then Monday they're also having their big, the actual official centennial celebration at Altria Theater.
Yes, with the author of R.L. Stein.
R.L. Stein's going to be there, and one of the writers of Blank Panther. So, going to be there celebrating the century of Poe history at the Poe Museum here in Richmond.
So definitely come and check that out.
Yep, so a lot going on. Yes, Marcia points out, yes, there's tours Thursday and Friday this week.
Yes.
So, I forget
Fridays
exactly
with Marcia, and it's almost sold out now. So there's only a few tickets left for that one, but we do have tickets for Thursday, Capitol Hill.
Is that the right way around? I thought it was Thursday. I think Marcia's doing Thursday. We'll find out in just a second.
I'm wrong. Thursday is Marcia. She's almost sold out. And Churchill is going on Friday. Yep.
Yep. With our good friend Tiffany.
Yep.
So anyways, yeah, that's what we got going on this week. I guess Wednesday's going to be a night off for us.
Not really off because I'll be working on more scripts.
No, during the day. I have to go to work, so.
I'll be working on more scripts.
Yeah. But anyways, that's kind of what's going on. Then we're laying low for the new year, and we'll be back with tours again in the new year on Fridays and Saturdays. Speaking of which, there is going to be one special tour next month. On
the 15th.
What?
The 15th.
Oh, I was going to say the 14th for John Marshall.
Oh, yes. John Marshall tour is returning next month, and also for February.
Yep.
So 14th of January for that one. So there's 2 tours that night, one at 7, one at 8.
Yep. Spaces are very limited, so if you want to join us there, I do strongly encourage that you do join us there. You can go ahead and sign up for that anytime now. And yes, we are having there is a one Sunday tour on, just a Shadows of Shaka tour on Sunday, January 15th.
Yep.
So, but anyways, yeah, so that's what we got going on this next month. And yeah. I'm trying to think.
I think that's all. So we will see you guys definitely next Monday, January 6th for another Facebook Live show. And if you come out and see us at one of our tours or one of our events next month, that would be awesome. Hope you all have a good new year, and we will see you on the 6th.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Bye.